Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Wednesday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Is Anthony Davis pushing to move back to power forward again as Team USA rolls through the medal round? That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. No matter how or where you get your podcast, this one's always going to be free and never tucked away behind a paywall. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube, so we can go hang out with over 25,000 subscribers, Andy, all of whom have been paying very close attention to the literal body, not the body language, but the body of Anthony Davis over in Paris as he continues to play very well for Team USA. Team USA beating Brazil on Tuesday handily, despite the strong efforts of former Laker Marcelo Huertas. Good to see him still rolling along there.
As Alex Caruso tweeted out on the 27th, Braun who? Marcelo Huertas is 41 out here balling.
That's right. He looks back on LeBron as a kid. Team USA just really demolished Brazil. 122-87 was the final score. Even Tyrese Halliburton played on Tuesday. That's how big of a blowout it was.
It appears to be we've entered the we've started to care phase for Team USA.
Yes, I believe they play Serbia next. Is that where we're going here? I don't remember. But if it is, they've done quite well with Serbia to this point. So you would expect that to continue. We'll get it back into this Team USA stuff here in a minute. Do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs have wound down. I'm not sure. The sport stopped sporting like we want them to, but this summer FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus every day. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So beyond the play of Anthony Davis, and then once again, he comes off the bench for like kind of a light workout, I would say. 16 minutes, 5 of 9 from the floor, 13 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, and a block. I mean, that's pretty good production for 16 minutes, but nobody on Team USA was working that hard. But it does reflect the quality of play that Davis has provided throughout the Olympic run-up and certainly since the tournament has started.
Yeah, it's been a really nice reminder to not just NBA fans, not just Laker fans, but the entire world that this guy is among the elite players in the NBA, certainly among one of the elite bigs. And talked about this before. I think last season, it's not comparable to what he's doing in Team USA because thankfully nobody has to work this hard. But I think last season, nobody in the NBA carried more of a two-way lift at an elite level on a team with stakes looking to contend than Anthony Davis. So it's just a continuation of what was an extremely strong season last year.
And I would say, and the everydayers will certainly, I've heard this from us before, but I think it's just worth repeating a lot. It's not that Anthony Davis is above criticism, because he's not. He is a superstar and he should be held to the appropriate standard. I think it is one of the strange things, just brief soapbox moment. One of the strange things we do as sports fans is we often excuse the lesser performances from the stars and hammer the supporting guys for not being good like all the time. Like as if if they were better, they wouldn't be supporting guys, they'd be stars. So this happens all the time. I saw what you did there. But that said, so you do have to hold your stars to your elite players to an elite standard. And I have no problem with that. Anthony Davis has had plenty of games where he deserved to be criticized. But that said, the goalpost moving with Anthony Davis is more aggressive than any other star that I can see, at least in the league. I think the standards for him in terms of what qualifies as, that's Anthony Davis meeting his potential, meeting, the standard that we're setting for him, shifts more frequently than it does for other stars. Maybe there are people, if you covered them locally and all that kind of stuff, people might disagree with me. But regardless of that, at the very least, it is very difficult to argue that for Davis, the goalposts don't move constantly. And so I just think it's good to see him being put in a position to remind people how good he is, to hit that standard all the time, and maybe reset a little bit of the conversation around it.
Well, and in the meantime, too, there are people wondering quite literally what position he will be playing next season. You in particular, Brian, you've seen chatter around the internets that AD looks slimmer to people now.
I've seen some people talking about that, and it's not like it's not been like AD talking about it. Like, guys bulk up a little bit every year, they slim down every year, they change their shape depending on the season before and what they liked about the results. They felt a little slower, they felt a little, and so like, look, I need to see some side by sides and all that kind of stuff, and not that much time has passed since the end of the playoffs to now. But there are certainly people out in the Lakers sphere who believe that AD looks much slimmer, that he's dropped some of the Anthony Davis bulking up weight, which I think he did some last year. The big AD was really, I think, 2 seasons ago, more so, I think, than last year. But I don't necessarily see it, but the impetus for all of this conversation is really about what position he plays. And a slimmer Anthony Davis signals more power forward. The idea that you're better off putting Davis at power forward, that's where he wants to play. And all the Lakers really need to do is find a center who can gobble up some minutes, and AD could go back to those splits from earlier in his Lakers career where he played some center, but played a lot of power forward as well.
Yeah, I think there's 2 ways to look at it. I mean, you could obviously talk about the narrative of him slimming down, which would signal the idea of him playing more power forward. I know Anthony Irwin, host of Lakers Lounge, former host of Locked On Lakers, friend of the show, has done a little digging around, and he's talked to some people who, A, think that AD looks slimmer, and B, suspect that could be potentially the rationale for it, for what it's worth. And I've not done the same asking around, but my eyes are more aligned with yours in the sense that I don't think AD looks particularly different when I'm watching him from last Lakers season to where he is in France. Granted, I will admit it was not something that I was even looking for at all until it was raised. But before even getting to the power forward section of this, there is another school of thought that rather than if slimming is taking place, it's preemptively with the idea of him moving to the 4. It could theoretically be more about him trying to gain a quickness and speed advantage against some of the 5s that, in all honesty, I don't care how much weight, muscle, however you want to put it, AD gains. He's not likely ever going to regularly win pure physicality matches against Jokic or Sabonis or Ivica Zubac or Embiid or whoever, because that's just not who Anthony Davis is. And I don't mean that as an insult.
8 pounds of muscle, 5, 6, 7 pounds of muscle. It's not going to change that equation.
Right. And so it's clear. This is not me using coded language to say Anthony Davis is soft. I don't think he's
not as strong as Yusuf Nurkic does not make one soft.
I don't think he is soft. Anthony Davis has really last season proved his willingness to play through a lot of ailments. And that to me is often the biggest marker for soft versus non-soft, I think, in ways that really matters. Just at the end of the day, he is not. Anthony Davis grabs too many rebounds and guards the lane too well to truly be considered a soft player. He's just not an overtly physical specimen kind of guy, and he's never going to be.
Right. I think
for better or for worse.
The softness, and I have a different explanation potentially too for if he is slimming down. Why? which we'll get to after the break. But I mean, the other thing is too, I mean, I think some of the softness is part of that. You know, I talked about the goalpost moving. The criticism of Anthony Davis that I think can be most legitimate is the times when he seems like he's just not aggressive. And so it's not necessarily a physical softness, but a lack of aggression that I think fires people up. But next, I want to talk about both another explanation that makes sense for why he would slim down this year, next year, and the year following even, and then talk about whether or not practically the Lakers could let him play 25, 30 minutes a night at power forward anymore anyway. So we'll get to that next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by BetterHelp. And what are your self-care negotiables? Maybe you never skip leg day with your workouts, but there's also the mental workout of therapy day. And when your schedule is packed with your job and stuff for your significant others, the kids' activities, projects, all sorts of stuff, it can be easy to let your priorities slip. And sometimes, even when we know what makes us happy, it can be hard to make time for that stuff. But when you feel like you don't have time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy become more important than ever. Therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so you can start living your best life. I can speak with how talking to a professional therapist helped me and my family during a really difficult period, helping us better communicate with each other, figure out compromises that don't leave yourself feeling either completely unfulfilled or completely unheard. And therapy can be different for everybody. And if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible, suited for your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA.
Thanks again for making Locked On Lakers first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast. There is, of course, no offseason in the NBA, and Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed or as entertained as Locked On NBA, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So I think, Andy, your point, regardless of what position AD plays, about wanting to feel lighter and more mobile and more agile to really play to his strengths, is a very likely explanation of any change to his body. And also, you know, it's both smart and it's also really positionally agnostic. You do that whether you think you're going to be playing center or power forward or both, because it really plays to your strengths if you're Davis. The other thing I would say is that, you know, as you get older, the natural tendency is to bulk up. And when you're that big, it also puts you in I think a greater position to get hurt. Like, you know, an extra 5 or 10 pounds on AD as he gets deeper into his 30s is probably more problematic than any benefit it gives him in terms of injury prevention and all that kind of stuff. So I think that could also, you know, looking out for his long-term health, it actually makes much more sense for Davis to be leaner and, you know, have sort of functional strength as opposed to, you know, being able to bench press a horse or whatever it would be. So that is also positionally agnostic.
Yeah. And, you know, as far as that lean muscle, that strength that isn't necessarily as visibly obvious, I just want to clarify one thing in talking about the physicality with AD before we talk more about the actual position that he will or will not be playing next season. Noting that Anthony Davis is never going to be physical in the same way of a Jokic or a Sabonis or some of the other guys that I named is not letting him off the hook for losing those matches of physicality regularly. Like, I just want to make sure it's clear because I know it could get missed.
Well, you have to still figure out, you know, elite player. You guys still got to figure out how to be effective against those guys. That is clearly a weakness that Davis has.
Exactly. And there's still an onus on him to figure out ways to neutralize it, which, for what it's worth, I thought he did a really good job of in the series against Denver versus Jokic. I mean, I think he basically played Jokic to a draw, if not maybe outplayed him on the series. And that was not due to Anthony Davis deciding this was the day I no longer get pushed around by Nikola Jokic, even though it was the day that he no longer got pushed around by Nikola Jokic. It was just him playing to the absolute top of his potential. And when he does that, he can find ways to offset some of the physicality that he's just not likely going to ever match up against these other guys in similar ways that Pau Gasol had to figure out ways to do that. And then he eventually did. And he played as well as any of the other elite bigs in the leagues that he was
against. Keeping in mind, these are good players. I mean, look, there is an onus for AD to figure out how to beat Sabonis. The Sabonis onus, if you want to call it that. But these are really good players, and it is Jokic makes everyone look bad, which is why he keeps winning MVPs, and is arguably the best player on the planet. So, there is that. The larger question, though, really, I think for the Lakers, it's like, Anthony Davis on Team USA, again, playing 18 minutes a night when they get to the silver medal game, the gold medal game, and all that kind of stuff, presumably, okay, that maybe goes up. Maybe we're looking at, 20 minutes a night, 25 minutes a night, 30. It's probably the upper range of what it could possibly be. And he's next to Bam Adebayo for like most of them. That's Anthony, if the Lakers had Bam Adebayo, Anthony Davis could play power forward.
Well, look, take it a step further. That second unit that AD plays with, it's basically Bam, AD, Kevin Durant, Anthony Edwards, and Derek White. I don't give a flying F what position you want. You want to say Anthony Davis is the point guard there.
Sure.
I don't give a crap. Like, if you put Anthony Davis around three shooters like KD, Ant, and Derek White, and the worst defender in your fivesome is Kevin Durant.
Who when he only needs to play 18 minutes a night or 7, can still defend.
Right. But
and
you're
has
talking
tremendous
about
length.
Anthony Edwards, Derek White, Bam, and AD. Those are 4 all defense level NBA players. They're all either all-stars or all NBA caliber players. AD can work in that setup,
right.
But even with, we'll talk about this, LeBron as the other star on this team, there are limitations that become evident that mean AD has to play the majority, if not all, of his minutes at center.
This is we'll save the why there for the next segment. This is a different. There is a sliding doors world, on Earth 2, where Pelinka, instead of waiting, made the Miles Turner Buddy Hield deal. In that world where the Lakers have Miles Turner, it's a different conversation because you have a rangy, you have a rangy center who can move out to the perimeter, who can, guard and help and hedge and all these other things. I'm not saying he's as good as Bam Adebayo defensively because he's not, but he's sort of Adebayo light. He's adjacent in that, and he actually probably a better fit with AD offensively than Bam is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so in that world, you really have 2 forwards and 2 centers. They are positionally interchangeable. I think Turner and AD, doesn't really matter. You could match them up against centers, you can match them up, call them power forwards, doesn't matter. But they didn't make that trade. And the team that they have is one that doesn't, you have Jackson Hayes and Christian Wood, who is, I guess, an even lighter version of that same template. But those are not guys who you can rely on to play in the same way. So when we get back from the break, we'll break it down, why it is so complicated for the Lakers, even if Davis still really wants to play power forward. He hasn't complained about it nearly as much as he used to. It's not workable currently. We'll get to it next.
Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel, and we all love sports. We love them so much we never want the sports to stop, but It's summer, fewer games. Sports are not sports like we want them to, but FanDuel lets you, lets me, lets everyone keep the sports going wherever we want, whenever we want. All we got to do is just open up the app, dream up bets anytime we're in the mood, and you got options. There's baseball, there's the WNBA, there's the Olympics, and if you want to look ahead, there are the 24-25 NBA season odds that you can start maybe putting out a little action on. As of this recording, the Lakers are 35-1 to win the championship. Anthony Davis, 151 for MVP. LeBron, 200-1. Dalton Connect, 10-1 for Rookie of the Year. And Max Christie, 150-1 for Most Improved Player. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster or bonus daily. That's right. Something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
So, in this universe where the Lakers had a Miles Turner-esque player on the roster, we would be having a very different conversation. And we would have had a different conversation last year about what Anthony Davis does. That is not the world we live in. The Lakers have the roster that they have. And with that roster, there's just no practical way for Davis to spend a lot of time at center or at power forward. And there's no center out there that they can go get that's going to change that equation. But there are a lot of reasons why Anthony Davis is and will remain the center for the Lakers. I mean, he won't play a little bit of power forward, depending on, play him with Jackson Hayes every once in a while, but he is going to play the overwhelming majority of his minutes at center.
Yeah. The biggest reason I think for this isn't even as much about Anthony Davis as it is about LeBron. Defensively, LeBron at the 3 as a primary position, because that would be the case if you had Anthony Davis at the 4 and Miles Turner or whoever at center, or vice versa. Either way, you are pushing LeBron out to the 3. Now, it is one thing if you are doing that for a defensive back line of Anthony Davis and Miles Turner,
right?
Which
or in the case of the Olympics when they're out there, Davis and Bam. Yeah,
sure.
LeBron,
but I'm talking about those just players that have been linked to the Lakers. Sure. It's one thing to offset the concerns that are real for LeBron. It's one thing LeBron doing this in the playoffs. LeBron will find the ways to make it work when those games start truly mattering, or in late March, early April, whatever, or pick a 5-minute segment in January. I'm not saying he can never do it, but as a primary assignment, it doesn't work unless you have an elite back line. Again, like an AD and Turner, if you can find that center.
Or conversely, an elite defensive back court to help out. So you need more defense than the Lakers have.
Right. Yes. And the LeBron piece of this makes it very unworkable. I would have done it for Miles Turner and AD anyway, just because that's a foundation I would be willing to build on moving forward, regardless of what it does with or without LeBron. But the other part of this, to be totally honest, is in 2020, Anthony Davis was the best version of himself as a jump shooting big that he's ever been with the Lakers. And that version of himself has not been remotely consistently there. And it creates spacing issues offensively as well, where you start getting a lesser version of Anthony Davis offensively because he is elite around the rim. He is one of the best players in the league around the rim. There is no logical reason to move Anthony Davis further away from the basket where he's less effective just because he wants to be seen as a 4. To quote Don Draper, that's what the money's for. Yeah. Like, at some point, you just have to do the things that are best for the team. It's also really difficult to find a center that would be cost effective for resource allocation. Like, we've had people asking us, instead of going after Jeremy Grant in Portland, what about DeAndre Ayton? DeAndre Ayton makes $70 million over the next 2 seasons. That is and I would be surprised if he played more than 22 minutes with the Lakers. That is a god-awful use of resource allocation.
He's not very good.
No, I don't think he's even bad.
Bad, but he is not you are making a massive investment in Ayton at that point. And I don't have a lot of trust and faith in that.
Or like with Wendell Carter Jr., who I think is actually a better fit alongside AD in terms of how they complement each other. You still have to think about what it's going to take to get him out of Orlando, and the minutes limitations are still likely there. Like there's a ceiling for how much any center on this team is going to be playing as long as Anthony Davis is on it. Like Andre Drummond would have been perfect. Like he's the guy that you can play 15 minutes a night. He can play a little bit with AD. He can hold down the fort when he's not there. There is no expectation that he'll play a major role, and you know he wasn't going to be making a ton of money. You can find somebody else like that. That's the guy you should be looking for. There just aren't that many guys out there like Drummond.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I want to make something else. I think it is important. I do think a lot of what is going on here with this conversation even is really a lot of it is projected from Lakers fans and what Lakers fans wish was the case. Maybe I apologize if I'm being a little harsh on Ayton. I'm just not a huge fan of that kind of investment in him.
It's a terrible investment.
Yeah, given just some of the reporting about motor, about attitude, and things like that. I don't. You need a firmer bet in my mind than that. Plus, it's got a lot of injury history there too. I think a lot of this is sort of wish casting from Lakers fans because they really want the team to look a certain way. They see what Anthony Davis can just a menace with that kind of help around him, and it's true. Like he can be ungodly to watch, even with what the Lakers have done over the last couple seasons. When you put him with these other guys, he's like it's ridiculous what he's able to do defensively. I don't think it's not like Davis is out there doing like where he used to every year at training camp say like, gosh, I really wish I could play more power forward. He's not talking about this. And so this isn't a Davis generated thing. I think it is another example of frustration in many ways with what Lakers fans see and feel about the team and about the group. And so, I mean, like in his private moments, does AD want to play power forward and wish he had Bam Adebayo or something similar next to him? I'm sure he does, but he's not talking about it and he's not going to. And so it's another one of these sort of avatars for what it would be great to see around him, because I think in part it would help Davis truly play at the level that he's capable of, because more support defensively would let him play better on that side of the ball, but also make it so he could probably be better offensively too.
I think there's also another piece of this too when you were talking about with Laker fans, and I've even seen this with some people who cover the team in media. There's that element of looking back to the 2020 championship team and the idea that setup was pretty quickly dismantled, and the dismantling of it, specifically with the Russ trade, but even some steps leading up to eventually acquiring Westbrook. It's like the Lakers went away from a championship setup and they are lamenting some of those decisions and wanting to return to the last setup that you saw win a championship.
Yeah.
And look, while you and I both said at the time that we thought running back that team as is was not practical because the turnaround was too quick from the bubble to the start of the new season with a group that age, like you needed to change some things up a little bit, bring in some fresher legs. But the truth is, even if Rob Pelinka hadn't made drastic moves, this coming postseason that we assume the Lakers will be a part of, that'll be 5 years between 2020 and 2025. I'm sorry, Rob Pelinka would have needed to make structural and structural changes that would have led to different X's and O's and lineups and approaches, because guys have gotten older. Things would have needed to change regardless. It's just too much time has passed to be relying on 2020 as your blueprint for if the Lakers just went back to that, everything would be fixed. Honestly,
Right.
going back to that model, unless you have the perfect players for it, would be a huge mistake.
It's one of those things where it's an interesting conversation to figure out like what would have happened in 2021 and 2022, but it's not terribly relevant for 2024/25, which is
Right.
what's coming up. So I agree with you there. But it just, in the end, it's going to be what it's going to be, and the Lakers have to figure out how to bolster if they can. The bottom line is like, can they find a better defensive lineup? Can a healthy Jared Vanderbilt play enough minutes to be impactful when they need him to? Can JJ Redick and a new coaching staff deploy players more effectively? Can Rui, improve just a little bit there? Like they need to figure out ways to improve internally on this stuff because they literally don't have any external capacity right now to change things. So, all right, Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out and watch the show. You, like many, have made Locked On Lakers your first listen today. You can go check out the Locked On NBA podcast where the season never ends and providing national expertise with a local perspective. You can find the link to Locked On NBA in the description, so you don't need to search around for it. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please leave us questions. Please leave us comments at Cam Brothers on the YouTube page. Do let us know guests that you want to see. We're trying to line up some as we speak, but we're going to need some more over the course of the next week or two. So if there are names that you want to see on the podcast, whether old friends or new faces, please do let us know. We'll see everyone tomorrow.